Hey.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining our webinar today. My name is Connie Heath. I am the Executive Director for City Engagement at Smart Cities Council. We have a good topic ahead of us here, unlocking smart tourism through digitally integrated public ecosystems. In our webinar today, we will explore the concept and capabilities of smart tourism and how it can enrich the tourist experience while also expanding the overall revenue potential for local economies, something I'm sure we can all agree is needed, particularly after COVID. But before we get underway, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. Um, all our attendees have been muted, but I do encourage you to post any of your questions in the chat box. We will try to get to as many questions as possible at the end of our presentation today. You will also be receiving a recording of today's webinar along with the presentation materials and contact information. And with that, I am privileged to introduce our guest speaker, John Brooks, Chief Executive Officer for Globeton in the Americas. John's career spans across several industries in both public and private sectors, including telecommunications, healthcare, defense, among other industries. He is responsible for establishing the sales and operational presence for Globeton in the Americas, positioning them as a leading force in platform integration and the transformation of digital services for telcos. And with that, John, welcome.
Well, thank you. I assume you can still hear me okay since I haven't clicked on anything since we started.
You're good to go.
Just making sure. Okay. Uh, Great. Thank you for the introduction, Connie, and welcome everybody. I wanted to take you through a conversation about smart tourism and understanding how that plays into the entire smart city landscape and how that interaction begins to benefit and really expound upon where the tourism industry is going right now. As cities and really entire countries introduce digitally transformative technologies, those are designed to improve and enhance societies. How do you leverage those to actually unlock smart tourism? So we'll walk through some of that in the slide presentation here today. And we'll start off with, first of all, laying the groundwork here. And let's talk about smart cities. And right now there's conversations out there in the industry of where are we at in smart cities? Is it 1.0, 2.0, 3.0? It's actually a little bit of all of the above. Smart City 1.0 was really focused on introducing a wide variety of technologies, and it was effectively the shiny thing in the room. That's a cool technology. I'm going to go deploy it in my city. But the thing is that these were very disconnected. They weren't necessarily integrated into an overall theme of a smart city. They were integrated into a theme of let's make our library connected to the public. Let's make our light poles now be smarter than they were before. They're very niche applications, but when you got into Smart City 2.0, which is essentially where most of us that are moving into smart cities are at today, you really start seeing more of a city visionary-led focus that uses technology to improve the quality of life. And that gets into the conversations around livability, for producing that better quality of life for residents and visitors. Workability, to make you a very economically competitive force in your region, to attract the best industries, to attract the best talent. And sustainability, where an environmentally conscious focus is really taken front and center stage in a lot of these conversations. So when you talk about a Smart City 2.0, now we start thinking about a data-driven foundation that supports these goals. And then when we talk about Smart City 3.0, not a lot of people are there yet, and there's still some arguments or conversations in the industry on what that really means right now. Generally speaking, 3.0 is emerging to create a more citizen co-creation model. It's got a lot of equity and inclusion in it. It tends to be focused on more initiatives that are emerging in that type of an environment. But really, for all intents and purposes, when we talk about 2.0, that's where the majority of us are striving to get to or already are really making moves to today. So let's talk briefly then about architecting a digitally integrated public ecosystem, because that lays the foundation for connected and smart tourism in general. And to do that, we'd want to lay the foundation of data management, data governance, and connecting the entire city. So the concept out there today that is really beginning to take hold in the industry is this notion of a city as a platform. And the city as a platform in our context is a 15-component structure that effectively ties together the people on the top, all the different users, internal and external, which is all your different city agencies or your county agencies or your state agencies, to businesses, to users, to citizens, to visitors, to other adjacent jurisdictions that need to be able to exchange information or synchronize information. And then the city as a platform then goes through and connects all of those user communities to networks of information, whether that be individual city services, city applications, platforms, data, IoT networks, et cetera. When you think about, though, this in the context of smart tourism, look at all of these 15 components in the center of the screen here. These are all components that make a city as a platform a very powerful contender. That when you want to now embed a citizen into the conversation of city as a platform and how that relates to tourism, tourism and citizen are almost interchangeable depending on what your goals are. This is what happens. Now all of a sudden you have all of these components in city as a platform that are actually dual purpose, not just for serving as a city as a platform enablement, but also for serving as a smart tourism enablement and a connected tourist component. So look at things on the left, like for instance, onboarding and identity and access management. As we get further into identifying that tourist and connecting to that tourist, you'll see why that identity and access management and the security associated with that become very important. The enterprise information portal, certainly a very key element, because this is our presentation layer to get that information on services, on attractions, on things that the tourist wants to be involved with to that tourist onto their mobile handset. Analytics and learning are associated with what's the performance of our industry? How are we attracting tourists better than the people next door in the region or the state or the country next to us? How are those performance metrics being measured? How are they being displayed? How are they being acted on? What are the insights that we're driving out of that? All embedded features within City as a platform. And then, of course, now we get into, as you move across to the right there a little bit, you start talking about citizen reward. This is a very interesting area for not just citizens, but also residents, visitors, tourists in general, because now we have the ability to reward and incentivize behaviors. In tourism, this focuses a great deal around incentivizing behaviors, not just around sustainability, but just visiting attractions, spending money, doing things in the region that not just promote their connection and their investment in the region as that tourist, but also provides incentives for them to do so. And then also the micro monetization piece. In a city as a platform environment, this is where you pay your bills. This is where you pay for a permit. This is where you pay your taxes. This is where you invest money to do something, to receive some service. In a tourism context, this is where you make a reservation for a city event. This is where you do something to reserve your space or pay for your activity that you're going to be doing. At the bottom corner there in the city catalog, this is a concept that in City 2.0 and Smart City 2.0, a lot of cities are just getting their hands around now. The idea, the notion that we brought out of the telecommunications environment, actually, around cataloging your products and services. So in a city environment, you're cataloging products, resources, entities that are all now available for consumption by those user groups. In a tourist environment, we're cataloging not just the local attractions that are offered by the government, but we're also acting on business attractions and business promotions as well. That'll become a very key component, because you look at the very top of the screen, the city as a platform, when it engages tourism, engages not only internal department users for promoting those different products and services, parks and recreation, skiing, whatever the case may be, but also you've got other agency partners that may be a county next door that wants to share in this tourism program with you, or business users that want to promote their products, services, their business to those tourists, and of course the tourists themselves. So this gives you an idea of the crossover and why City as a platform is a technology that is is destined built not just for promoting and providing city as a platform services, but also it's dual enabled for providing citizen services. So let's talk a little bit more about taking a step back and understanding some of the international trends that are happening right now in the tourism industry. So, you know, when you think about COVID and what it did to travel, it decimated travel during COVID. After COVID, it's rebounded, and not only has it rebounded in many or most regions around the world, it's actually exceeded prior COVID levels and is starting to set records. So we're seeing that global travel now has really rebounded very, very well. And not true in every region, but predominantly most regions are reporting higher traffic. Most regions or most travel transportation providers, airlines, for instance, are reporting record traffic. It's an ironic situation because the industry right now is having trouble staffing all of its services for hospitality, for transportation, and so on. Yet they're seeing demand be at its highest level in some cases ever. So, but this has also brought about a different change in the behavior of the tourist. After COVID, we really had a change in mindset. We were starting that direction before COVID as technology really proliferated throughout the tourism industry, but we really hadn't tied it together yet. COVID changed a lot of that. And what it did is it really solidified the requirement for people to live with a technology component deep entrenched in their behavior, in their lifestyle. Same thing goes for tourism. So now we're seeing the need for smarter experiences. This is a highly competitive market now. And the focus is really on offering those digital services that can be accessed while you're on the go through your handset to enhance that mobile experience. We're really seeing that start to play a factor in here now. And you know, when we look at the amount of rebounding that's taken place, I'm based here in Colorado. Give you an idea of what's happening here over the last few years. We've gotten to the point where almost every outdoor attraction in the state requires a reservation to go to it. 5 years ago, you could drive to anything and do anything, go hiking, go to an event, do whatever. The majority of our outdoor activities now require reservations outside of city parades and things like that. But if you want to go up to hike on a trail, you better have a reservation to park your car and to be on that place. That's what's happened to the industry right now. So technology has been a big driver in helping manage and coordinate a lot of the activity, not just that piece, but also exposing that activity to the visitor in general. So it starts to beg the question then, how do governments, businesses, chambers of commerce, et cetera, how do we understand and leverage this new paradigm in tourism that's taking place now? You know, how do we start to really grab a hold of and understand that smart tourist? So to do that, let's first understand a little bit more about digitally connected tourism and just what that looks like from a technology component. So let's look at the key components of smart tourism. We talked about the city as a platform, but let's kind of drill a little deeper into just the tourism aspect of this. And smart tourism really has three pillars within it of access points. The first one is going to be, of course, your tourists and your visitors. They're going to have secure portal access that's going to allow them to get to a gateway that will allow them to access the data, access the information, provide location, understand what promotions, incentives, attractions, and so on are within their immediate geography, allow them to plan what their activities are going to be, and also to activate a digital wallet. We'll talk a little bit about this throughout the presentation, but digital wallets have become a very important facet in some jurisdictions to tourism. And digital wallets get even more exciting when they don't care about currency anymore. And I'll talk more about that here a little bit. That's not necessarily a crypto conversation as much as it's really a conversation of getting on a cruise ship and going to 5 different ports in 5 different countries, using the same digital wallet and never having to carry cash. We'll get back to that in a little bit, but this portal and this access into this smart tourism hub gives you access to those businesses. It gives you access to that digital wallet. and it also gives you access, could that be something that the jurisdiction wants to pursue, into loyalty programs and incentives to help guide behaviors, to help guide that experience. The second pillar of this is really around your city leadership and your Chamber of Commerce leadership that are relying on analytics. They want to understand how's tourism performing in certain areas. If we want to actually drive behaviors to get people to a certain section of our region, a certain community, or a certain attraction, what are the promotions that we're going to put in place to make that happen? And now let's look at the analytics to see how many people are actually accessing that, making reservations for it if needed, visiting that. Where are those analytics? And those analytics, to some extent, are available in the market today. Are they available in real time? And the answer is usually no. And smart tourism, connected tourism changes that paradigm and makes that a yes, that those analytics become very readily available. And not just available, but also actionable. So if you're looking for a particular response to a promotion, and that response is actually happening more than you expected, you may back off on the promotion because you just can't handle any more people. On the other hand, if that promotion's not working as expected, you could actually enhance that promotion in real time to actually help maneuver and manipulate some of those tourists back into the area. It's taken one out of the airline playbook. If the airlines haven't sold enough seats, they open the cheaper seats up until the plane's full. So similar concept in a lot of ways. The third pillar of this is the one that has always kind of sat in the background. And this is your regional business partners. When I say they've sat in the background, it's, yes, they're promoted as tourism. They're usually somewhere on a card rack at a kiosk that has their logo with their flyer or something sitting on it, or they pay a certain amount of money to get their logo up on the community or the attraction website. That's a back-end approach in a lot of ways. That's not putting them front and center and giving them a good chance to compete for those tourists. What we want to do now in a connected tourism environment is to now go through and say, let's make the regional business partners as smart as the tourists and the government are. Let's give them secure access to go into a tourism portal, and now they can promote their own business, their own products, their own promotions, et cetera, through that portal, and make that immediately available to anybody that's out there looking for what they want to be doing with that business. So let's drill into the business partners just for a couple of more moments here and talk about that and what that actually looks like. So when we think about a deeper look into business partners, each business in this environment can really now get in and establish and maintain their own business, their own digital presence. So as I mentioned, their services, their locations, their special offers, their promotions, all of those things are controllable by them, which now all of a sudden widens the scope of what you're able to make available to a tourist. Now a tourist doesn't see the closest or the 50 businesses that now have promoted their products and services on these flyers or on websites or whatever. Now they can see 300 or 400 or even 3,000 or 4,000 different small businesses that can be immediately accessible depending on what that tourist is looking for. Are they looking for food, or do they want a hotel? Are they looking for skiing, or do they want to rent a car? What's the activity? What's the action that they want to take? Well, this gives them a library that's completely self-managed by the business partner. And it also gives them a great place to solicit feedback from those tourists. But I think one of the big takeaways here is this evens the playing field for small businesses and large businesses. No longer do you need to have a big budget to be able to drive these conversations. So, the business portal itself is something that's very customized in design and what it's able to do. But some of the hallmarks that you want to have in that portal are, number one, secure self-onboarding, so you can maintain everything that you need to maintain and do it when you need to do it, and keep that fully under your business's control. Offer incentive management, of course, goes hand in hand with that. What do I want to make available to those tourists? When do I want to attract them? Do I want to make those promotions available in real time on a time-sensitive environment, to where after a major sporting event, that's when the promotion goes live to bring them in? Or what are the criteria around that? But then also I can look at business performance analytics. How am I competing in this? How many people am I actually attracting? If I've got a sea of 60,000 people that have come through for a major event, Did they get 5 of them? Did they get 500 of them? Not just did they walk in the door, I already know that, but how many people served me on that website? How many people looked to see that business? How many people were looking for even that category of services? Those are the types of things that become available in that business portal. So as we dig a little deeper then, and let's talk about local governments. When we look at a local government and what their opportunity is here, it's the same as it's really been in the past, but the difference here now is that there's a much richer depth of information that can be made available. So you imagine now local governments can not just establish and maintain their own digital presence, but now they can do more creative, more visionary types of engagements with those visitors and tourists and their local citizens. So, and this applies to the business side as well. This isn't just about tourists. You know, you want to be able to promote behaviors across the spectrum of your potential visitors or clientele. And sustainable activities are becoming more and more of a driver, though, for a lot of our governments. There's a considerable amount of interest in promoting conservation of resources, of recycling, of reuse, of less damage and harm to environments, and so on. There's a great deal of activity associated with the incentives involved in that. But local business partners can now promote sustainable activities. They can promote special events. They can promote their local attractions, their parks, and so on and so forth, and regional awareness. You know, somebody drives into a new region and they don't know what's there. Where's the billboard that shows them what they can do? Well, it's on their handset. It's sitting in their smartphone. It's not sitting on the side of a road at a visitor center with 1,000 different flyers out there. It's going to be more often than not mobile with them in real time. And again, we have the feedback option here as well. But I think that's one of the key components to think about with engaging from a government perspective, is that now we have not just the ability to engage, but we have the ability to guide that experience, to guide where we want these personas to be and what types of activities we want them to engage in. So, you know, a local portal, our local government portal now is going to have very similar information available to it to what a business had, but a few minor differences. So area attractions, you know, are you a ski town? Are you a beach town? Working with a jurisdiction down in South America, they didn't have any ski slopes, but they had a lot of beach. The only problem is the jurisdictions around them also had a lot of beach. So how do they get people into their area? And that was very important to try and attract them and bring in a wider scope of services to really enhance and improve that tourist experience. So they can maintain their own attractions. They have full regional control. They're not you know, locked into what a state government or a federal government agency may put together for them. They have full control and manipulation capability of what their different activities are that they're going to be promoting. And that feeds down into local events and certainly into those analytics. And again, analytics drive the day here on any of these conversations. You really need to be able to measure and draw insights from your success or your lack of success, so you can learn on how to go through and get a bigger share of that wallet. How do we get those tourists coming in our door? What's the thing that makes us stand out more than the other guys? So those are all factors that we need to, you know, keep in mind and take into consideration from a local business perspective. And then finally, let's talk about the connected tourist. You know, what's that look like today? Doing a deeper dive on the connected tourist, the tourist has changed quite a bit. Over the last 10 years, especially, arguably over the last 5 years, there's a lot more, I think of the right word to say here, there's a lot more purpose in a lot of the younger tourists, especially out there today, and even with some of us that aren't maybe quite so young. We have a lot more planning involved in what we used to do. And the planning is often destination based. So, you know, you're going to be going here. What are the things you're going to want to do? We did that in the past, but we had it on a list. We would just tick off the list as we got to it. Now there's a little bit more calendar specific planning that's taking place because they can. now that we've got pre-arrival planning and real-time information available, the digital tourist, the connected and smart tourist, can actually do far more extensive planning, reservations, conversations with those particular attractions or businesses they want to interact with. They can do all of that digitally now. So there is no longer a need to make a phone call or get there and communicate or track down reservations or work with the concierge at the hotel front desk. A lot of that is starting to give way to what a tourist is able to do on their own right now. So, you know, we can load an app with them almost immediately before they even get there through an app store. So a region could have a tourism app that they could now download. It could be shared across multiple regions as far as that goes. But then they can start to search and support or have received search support for the services that they want to get to. And they can trim those down and filter those by where they're physically located right now, by the type of service they want to access, by the events they want to go see or witness, by the offers that are out there. And again, this spans a broad brushstroke of restaurants and hotels and sporting events and community events and, you know, parades and so on and so forth, and outdoor activities. All of these all become accessible to that tourist in real time. And I think that one of the hallmark foundational aspects of what a connected tourist is they're connected all the time. They're connected before their visit, they're connected during their visit, and they're very potentially connected after they leave. So those journeys are mappable. Those journeys are tracked within our analytics. So now as a tourist, we can start to form digital personas and understand. And why this becomes important now is that we can actually give them suggestions in real time. We know that depending on what types of activities particular groups of tourists have engaged in, we can actually look at where they're located and make suggestions on what things they could be doing. So all of this goes to enriching that experience. So, you know, a digital, a smart tourist that we're connecting with through digital means does have that planning capability, does have immediate access as soon as they arrive. They can activate that digital wallet and travel cashless. And then they also can start to incentivize or start to take advantage of incentives and loyalty offers that they're these activities that they're actually incentivized to go do. And also the real-time geo-awareness is something we had mentioned a few moments ago, but let's touch on that again. Geo-awareness is not just to show me the closest restaurant next to me or in my area. Geo-awareness also has a component that feeds back to those businesses. So those of you that are familiar with telecommunications and near-field communications, the ability to walk down a certain area and have that restaurant proactively reach out to that tourist. So the tourist doesn't have to go look you up. The restaurant can reach out and say, hey, we're a block away. Come around the corner, 10% off your bill, as an example. So by having that real-time awareness, it's not just the tourist having the awareness, it's also potentially the businesses having the awareness. The tourist allows for push notifications. Now you're competing. Now you have a chance to go get them. And they didn't necessarily want to walk around the corner until they saw that offer pop up. So plenty of ways to enrich their experience, plenty of ways to really drive them into a deeper interaction with your region, and plenty of ways to ultimately gain a larger share of the tourist wallet out there. So let's talk a little bit about the benefits of enabling a smart tourism ecosystem. First of all, as we mentioned a little bit earlier, it's about leveling the playing field. It's about small businesses having the same exposure as the big guys. It's also about rewarding those tourists during their visit, giving them incentives and credits that they can redeem to do things. It's promoting goals. Some of those goals are sustainability. Some of them are just increased revenue share. It's also promoting return. If you go to a place where you sit for 4 hours in traffic, But then you go to another place that has the 4-hour traffic, but it knows the window that you should go in, and it pushes that out to you and says, don't go at 8 o'clock in the morning, go at 10:45. All of a sudden that visibility became much greater to the tourist, and their experience has become much greater as a result. They want to come back. How do you incentivize them to return, to say, I had a good experience. Any place I went, my app told me, my digital connectivity, my digital enablement with that region told me, based on what I like to do, it told me what my options were. It gave me different options to work with. That's a very powerful tool that, again, promotes that return because it was an easy experience. It was a comfortable experience. And it also ultimately gives you the chance to create a regional address book. Now we know who those people are. Now we know when they return. This gives us some data as a jurisdiction, as businesses, as governments. This gives us data that allows us to now create analytics to measure successes. That allows us to control our image. It allows us to adapt to changing conditions. It allows us all of those capabilities right now that we didn't necessarily have when we were simply just pushing information out on a piece of paper or on a website. Now we're connected. Now we're engaged. And that personalization becomes very important. So as we start to wrap some of the conversation up here, the next few slides, let's talk about what that digital engagement partnership looks like from our perspective at Gloviton. First of all, I think that something that is important to think about is how do we drive business value using technology? And our platforms around smart tourism are really configured to drive business value in several different areas. So we really want to increase regional positive evaluation. We want people to like their experience and come back again and speak to others about it. We want to help increase, obviously, sales revenue. We want a bigger share of that tourism wallet. We want to really encourage large and small businesses. We really want this to be an ecosystem where everybody in the region benefits from this, not just the few big hitters. It's you go to central part of Florida. There used to be, 30, 40 years ago, there was a wide array of attractions and theme parks. Then came Disney. Almost every one of those other ancillary parks around that region are gone and have been gone for the last 25 years. They didn't have a chance. They didn't have the exposure. They didn't have the visibility to grab a hold of those tourisms as the big guy did. How do we stop that? How do we even the playing field? Also, we want to make sure that technology keeps the information with you on the go. We want that mobile application capability so that you know where you are, what's available to you, when you can get to it, how do you get involved with it, et cetera. And that leads also into personalization through localization. If you're in this particular spot, what's around? What can I get to? If you want to move to another location and then drive down the road and see what's going to be available in that town, you can very quickly through technology find out what's there, make reservations, do things. Same thing with then offers, promotions, and discounts and promoting events. If you're a citizen or a resident, you're accessing that catalog of services for doing things like, well, if you're a contractor, you're out looking for building permits and requesting inspections. But if you're a parent, you're out the Parks and Rec department looking for classes and looking for sporting events and reserving a racquetball court or pickleball or whatever now. But if you're a tourist, you're accessing that same catalog to see what types of things are there that I want to go do that are going to help me better engage with this particular area that I'm going to get the best out of that visit experience. Also, we want to make sure we keep in mind loyalty programs. This is something that not all tourism areas take full advantage of. They really just don't have access to it. But tourism has the opportunity to drive behaviors, whether they be around sustainability or not, to drive behaviors to help gather a bigger share of wallet and increase exposure. So it's really a conversation in loyalty programs of, number one, knowing who your potential tourists are, and then influencing their buying behavior in real time. And that gets into the NFC conversations we were talking about a few moments ago as well. but then also ultimately you're actively driving that deeper relationship with those visitors. You're making your region the place that they really enjoy coming back to. It was a seamless experience. It was a very enriching experience. That spreads. That doesn't spread just with return visitors. It spreads through popularity and notoriety from those visitors and their feedback. We get that in surveys, but we also get it in the fact that they just word of mouth. They're going to go through and say, I went to Central Florida and it was great, or I went to Central Florida and it was miserable. That's driven by how well you engage with those tourists. So, and I think that one of the last points to talk about when it comes to technology enablement is thinking about this life cycle, that while you're increasing revenues through a digital wallet concept, you're also going through and doing things like within that concept, you're automatically and securely onboarding that tourist and their information. You're encouraging them to spend money, and if you're engaged in a loyalty program, you're adding loyalty credits to them that they can redeem for whatever those redeemable things are. Discounts, promotions, more incentives to do more things. You're redeeming those credits and you're encouraging purchases. You're gathering information on those tourists so you know how to in real time model and refine those experiences, and also make the next tourist have a very good experience along the way as well. And then you're also, as a result of some of that information collection, you're actually able to alter and amend and improve some of their experiences through behavioral updates with what they're being presented and how they're exposing themselves to those different opportunities out there. So the last section I want to cover off on real briefly here is just talking about how do you start? What starts a smart tourism program? What are some of the key steps you need to think about? Now, there's a great deal of detail in something like this. I've broken it down to just these 5 points. Number one, when looking at a smart tourism program, is define your goals. What are the goals you want to get to? What are the types of activities that you want to be pursuing with your tourists? What do you want them to encourage to engage in? What are the things that you want to achieve as your goals? Now, we've talked about the goals, but the next thing we want to do is make sure we understand which ones of those goals are good for tourism, because not all of them might be. Some of them may be goals that are better just for local residents, and some of those goals may not have a tourism impact at all. So you really want to segment those goals out. So you define them, but let's make sure they apply to your tourism population as well. Then if we want to think about incentivizing behaviors, then what types of activities do we want to incentivize? Of those goals, the activities associated with them, how do we incentivize so we can get people to that community, or to that sporting activity, or to that event, or to that national park? What are the things that we're going to do to try and incentivize that? And keep in mind that when you expose activities to a group of people, the net you cast is going to capture a subset of that. The idea with incentive programs is to immediately expand that net that you're casting, because by default, you're going to get a certain group already. But how do you widen that net? How do you keep them in your area longer before they head down the road to the next place? So this is all associated with those rewardable activities. This is about expanding that net coverage and hanging on to them longer. And then also in creating, once you've identified your goals, you've identified the activities, now let's identify the incentives that are associated with them. And once we've done that, now let's also enlist our local businesses. And they can repeat many of these same steps for their own onboarding. They can identify the groups of people they want to attract in. They can identify the types of activities the types of actions they want to do to incentivize those, and then they can identify what those incentives are. So anyway, this is a lot of information in a short period of time, but I hope this has been very helpful. With that, though, I will hand this back to see if we have any questions, and Connie, I'll bring you back to the conversation.
Thank you, John. That was great. And let me just see. We do have a couple of questions here. So maybe if you could just remind everybody, some examples of what visitor rewards would be. And there's a two-part to this. And when would be the best time to onboard a tourist? from the city perspective and from the visitor's perspective? Is it prior to them launching their travel, or is it once they get to the city or their destination?
Right. And that's really going to be based on a few different factors. So let's talk about types of incentives first. The types of incentives that we see out there can be anything from incentives that are not necessarily based on an activity or as far as a rewardable thing, but incentives that are, come to our restaurant and receive a discount, or after this event, take this transportation and receive redeemable credits. Or come see us 2 or 3 times during your visit and receive some other type of incentive. I give you a kind of a brief example. One of my daughters lives up in New England, and she was incentivized by the state of New Hampshire to visit all of the state. They did that by bribing them with ice cream, and they said, if you visit 80 ice cream shops in this state, we're going to give you a hoodie sweatshirt. Unbelievable how many people actually do that. They're incentivized to go visit all these places to get their hoodie sweatshirt. Now, I never thought I'd hear the day when my daughter was sick of ice cream, but she is now. But she got the sweatshirt. But that's the types of behaviors. This is where cities and businesses have a chance to be very, very creative on types of incentives that they make available out there. Some of those are based on a visit or a participation. Some of those are based on a reward for that participation as well. Mm-hmm. So you do something long enough, you can redeem credit to do X, Y, or Z. Some of them are just very much moment in time. Is that near field communication? We see that you're in this particular area. In this area, I've got 15 establishments I can go visit. I've got 20 different attractions I can go visit. Which attraction is going to bubble to the top and give me the incentive to come visit? Which one's going to compete for me at that moment in time? Now, 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, that incentive may not be there. But today, when my traffic is generally slower and I've got a smaller population to grab from, that's when the incentive exists. So there's hopefully that answers the questions on the types of incentives, because that's really look at what your particular offers are in your region. That'll drive your incentives. And one of the pilots we did in Europe had incentives to where if you used renewable or more sustainable transportation, you actually had incentives that manifested as credits on city owed services, utility bills, parking meters, things like that. So you can really use your imagination on this, on how that goes. And then the best time to onboard a tourist, the optimal time to onboard somebody is in a pre-planning stage. How do you, as soon as, and this is a partnership with transportation and hotels at that point, as soon as that reservation is made, how do you reach out to them to let them know that this is available? How do you now engage them to say, I know you've got a ticket on United or Southwest or Singapore Air or whatever. I know where you're going. Here's some resources for you. How do we push that out and get them engaged in pre-planning? Because the digital, connected, and smart tourist now is all about pre-planning. They want to really investigate their area, and website and mobile applications are phenomenal ways to now do that, because not only does it show them what's available, but it allows them to start setting up participation planning right then and there. But the majority of the time, I'm at this point, I think a lot of the onboarding is going to happen as they arrive. Mm-hmm. And that may be a QR code scan, that may be a variety of different methods, but a lot of times we really want to get them early. But a lot of times it may be an arrival thing. But then that QR code, where do you put it? You're probably not going to put it on a billboard outside of town, but you may have that QR code available in all of your local business partners. The first one they hit, they can grab that code. They can grab the app, essentially. So,
yeah. I mean, a hotel's a logical place when folks are checking in too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We have another question here about case studies where, we can see increased sales from tourists, and are they using it to promote local events, not just things for tourists?
Yes. And this is that crossover. Remember, we spoke a few minutes ago about there's not a lot of distinguishment sometimes on where businesses are trying to market to, where they're trying to get that share of wallet from. Is it a resident or is it a tourist? A lot of businesses say, we don't care. We want them both. But But that a lot of those studies that have been done are more traffic based as opposed to type of visitor based. So, did my incentive bring people in? Then, do they have enough intelligence in the data to understand, were those people visitors? Were they visitors from across town? Were they visitors from across the country? Or were they just somebody who lived in a loft around the corner? A lot of the only way they can glean that information oftentimes is repeatability of that visitor. So, it's hard to find a major restaurant these days that doesn't have a loyalty program. I mean, how many apps can you get for P.F. Chang's for, everybody out there? They've all got somebody with P.F. Chang's on right now. They'll probably be glad I said that. But there's so many different ways to incentivize that loyalty. When we start encapsulating all of that and sharing that data, now we can start to distinguish who are my repeatable people, number one. Who are the first timers or the two timers? And now we can start mapping personas out and then take those analytics and understand, of my 75% of my visitors to my establishment are in fact tourists, 25% are repeat or vice versa. It allows us to now adjust the analytics and start producing more insightful information in those case studies that right now a lot of places just don't have. So
right. Another question we have here, does the platform have a traditional 311 services available?
Of course. And that gets into the enterprise information portal. And the 311 services piece of that is an interesting animal because a lot of visitors aren't as aware of 311 consolidated information services as they should be. I can't say that most jurisdictions we've talked to really have promoted themselves to visitors as well as they could. A lot of the residents know about it, and a lot of the residents, the old school residents are actually picking up the phone and doing the 311 thing instead of actually going online, realizing that those encapsulated and integrated services are available. But the platform does take information from not only all of the city, county, or all of the jurisdictional services and integrate them into one presentation for consumption by whomever is looking for that information. But in a tourism environment, especially now, we also, those exact same 311 services can now incorporate all of those local businesses as well. So it's really the true one place where a visitor or a resident can go to find out everything that's available. As soon as you bring in the tourism component, or even without the tourism component, you bring in the businesses into that digitally integrated public ecosystem. As soon as you have them in there as well, now the breadth of services, not just from the jurisdiction, are made available to all of those consumers.
And like you said, as a tourist, you may not really think that far as you're, thinking about your traveling. You're not thinking about those services and the need that might be there.
Right, exactly. And that gets back to your conversation or your comment about the hotel and having access to that information, that 311, because that's effectively what a lot of this is at the end of the day. It's 311 for a wider net, much bigger than just the government and the local attractions. As soon as they can get onboarded to that information, the quicker everybody around them, the businesses, the attractions, and so on, benefit from the tourist or the visitor or the resident having the knowledge. And what's the quickest path to get them the knowledge? And that's where Connect a Tourist is today.
Perfect. And one final question with a two-parter. Can a smart tourism program, you touched on this, span more than one region, area / country? And if it's spanning various countries, does it need to be a fixed currency, or can it adjust for those currencies?
Right. And the answer is a program can be as large as you want it to be and by as many partners. So one of the components in that city as a platform architecture actually has a facility to integrate and coordinate and share communication information with adjacent agencies. So adjacent cities, adjacent tourist areas. In one of the pilots that we did over in Europe, they were literally two cities on opposite ends of the country from each other. But they knew that they had common tourist traffic. When they would hit that country, they would just go around the country. So now how do we incentivize behaviors in one that can be redeemed in the other and vice versa? Depending on the density of the area in terms of population and attractions, those attractions will more often than not, actually span multiple areas. And so the ability for us to then connect digital tourism into a unified ecosystem, as opposed to got to have an app for this guy, then go get an app for that guy. You don't have to do that. One app can allow you to be able to enjoy all of the benefits of all of those areas, because it's all geolocated, number one. And now you've got, there's not necessarily a fee to become a member of any of this. All there is I'm going to promote myself, and here's my business. Here's the business next to me. Here's the business next to me on the other side. Here's a business 30 miles away. When we have all of that availability now online and accessible, when the tourist is in front of my establishment, they're not seeing the one 30 miles away. But when they're in front of that business 30 miles away, they are seeing them and they're not seeing me. Now, that allows, if we're tied to the same ecosystem, we can actually redeem loyalty credits and rewards between both. We can actually use our digital wallet in both, and that gets back to the currency question. And this is where one of the customers that we're working with right now is actually, it's not a city, it's not a government. It's essentially a cruise ship organization. And the idea with the cruise ship industry is that they don't just go to one place. They go to a lot of places, and most of those places are not in the same country. So as a result, when you get on board that ship, you could actually we're not live with them. We're not doing anything with them yet, but we're doing a lot of conceptual conversations with them, because they've all got their own app. But what they don't have is the local enablement within that app. And they also don't have the digital wallet within that app. So on board that boat, you can do anything you want. But as soon as you get off in Cozumel or in Cancun or in Grand Cayman or in wherever you may be, as soon as you get off in those areas, there's a new currency, there's a new set of businesses, there's a new set of everything. Well, the tourist in this paradigm can travel with that same digital wallet, and the currency conversion is taking place at the app level, at the wallet level, so that they don't have to carry a credit card if they don't want to. They've got their phone. They don't have to carry cash with them or do currency conversion. They've got their phone. So by doing that, now they can actually go into Grand Cayman, have lunch, get a nice big conch burger and some fries and have a good time. And as soon as they get back on the boat and go to Cozumel, they can get back off and do the exact same thing there. Currency exchange is taking place on the back end, so they don't have to worry about it. So it does not need to be a fixed currency. 9 times out of 10, we will see it be a fixed currency, because it will be a regionally specific thing. Mm-hmm. But when you start having international considerations, then yeah, it's fully supportive of that kind of thing.
I'm ready to travel.
Yeah, me too. I listen. I think it sounds great.
That sounds great. Well, I'd like to thank you, John. Thanks so much for sharing this information with all of us. As I said for our attendees, we will be sending you John's presentation. And if you have any questions, you've got contact information. There's a lot to be done here, folks. Let's get traveling.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.